Okay, AP Chapter 15, Lecture 2, Women and the Family Economy. This is still part of society, and we're looking at gender roles and the roles of family. Women's life largely determined by her ability to establish and maintain a household. Marriage was an economic necessity because she's living in a male-dominated world. Her dominant concern was adequate food supply and the necessity of limiting the number of children in birth control, because these would be more children that she would have to support and raise. Children in the family economy. 18th century around, childbirth is dangerous for both mother and child. Wet nursing industry is well developed, necessary because full-time motherhood is usually impossible. The birth of a child often meant increased economic hardship and some infanticide. Infanticide would be another version of our modern-day abortion. Foundling hospitals were established for abandoned children, victims of poverty or illegitimacy. This idea comes up in one of the FRQs, this idea of illegitimacy, and they would just give the child to a founding hospital. Okay, now the agricultural revolution, another main topic that's in our FRQs. The main goal of traditional peasant society was just a stable food supply. They were resistant to change that might endanger that supply. They were vulnerable to poor harvests, which is nature, fluctuation in the price of grain or bread, and slow price in grain prices throughout the 18th century triggers a series of innovations in farm productions. That's the agricultural revolution, the innovations in farm production. Agricultural revolution is peasants often resisted and were brutally repressed. So they weren't fond of change. Here are some of the agricultural innovations. The Dutch in the 16th and 17th century found better ways to drain the land. They experimented with new crops, clover and turnips, used for animal fodder and soil restoration. So not only were they good for animals, but they're also good at replenishing the soil. The English, and they're also low maintenance in terms of their growing them. The English in the 18th century, the biggest popularizers of early innovations. 3 of them. Jethro Tull, agricultural experimenter, invented the seed drill, which we'll see. Charles Turnip Townsend instituted crop rotation. That's another major one. Robert Bakewell improved methods of animal breeding. Enclosure, here's another real important thing that you can use for your FRQ. Replaced open field or village method, created large tracts of farmland out of small plots, common land, and waste areas. Put land to more productive use, but caused turmoil for peasant farmers. It commercialized or made it a market for agriculture. Improvements more limited in the East. This is the seed drill. It just basically puts the seed into the ground. So population increase. This is one of your test bank questions, by the way, and it's also the subject of your FRQ. Approximate population of non-Ottoman Europe. This would be from the Middle East and Turkey. 1700, 1 to 200 million. 1800, 190. And by 1850, it's 260 million. You can almost see that it's almost at a doubling rate. It put pressure on food prices, driving agricultural innovation and spurring the Industrial Revolution. Now we move into the Industrial Revolution. The second half of the 1800s, beginning of industrialization, introduced virtually uninterrupted economic growth. So this is beyond your FRQ. So you would not use this in your FRQ because it's in the 1800s. Made possible the greatest production of goods and services in history, carried a high social cost, though eventually did away with rampant poverty. The Consumer Revolution, production of new goods, driven by increases in demand, learning to want things. New things. Clothing, buttons, toys, china, furniture, rugs, all these consumer products that are now available to the average person. Brass, silver, pewter, glassware, watches, jewelry, soap, beer, wine, foods. Because what were the factors involved? In disposable income, they could spend whatever they wanted to. New methods of entrepreneurial marketing is people marketing their products, developing of the fashion industry. People always want to be noticed. The consumer economy became a permanent feature of European economy, despite conflicts with Christian ethics, which are modesty. And here's a shop where they're making dresses. Industrialization and industrialism in Great Britain. Great Britain is the industrial leader of Europe through the mid-19th century. Here are the factors. London is the largest city in Europe and the center of fashion. Well, fashion requires textiles, different types of cloth. Prominence of newspapers and advertising. Largest free trade area in Europe. Rich in coal and iron ore. Stable in political structure. Secure property and sound financial system. And comparatively high social mobility. These are all factors, even today, with what you would consider how to create an industrialized society. The textile industry, textile production, is the earliest industrial change took place in the countryside, not in cities. Domestic or putting out system, really important. Of textile production, family economy. Urban textile merchants sent wool and other fibers to homes of peasants who spun thread and wove cloth. The growing demand causes production bottlenecks leading to famous inventions. One, the spinning jenny. Multiple spindles of thread spun on one machine broke bottleneck between spinners and weavers. The water frame, water-powered device that produced purely cotton fabric rather than cotton and linen, took cotton textile manufacture out of the home and into the factory. That's a huge change. And cotton output increased 800% between 1780 and 1900. And there's a picture of the spinning jenny. And we'll stop there.